Hello, hello. Good to see everybody again. Another crazy day in the world in this timeline that we're in. Um, while I'm waiting for kind of people to start trickling in, I'm going to kind of go through the situation in Caracas because I saw some news that there was like gunfire at the presidential palace and that there was gunfire on the streets. But then I also saw that the guard was shooting on their own drones. So I'm going to figure out what's actually going on with that, or at least try to from the random videos that are being posted online right now. And then later, I'm going to talk about some alarming situations developing with um, employers basically not paying their employees who are undocumented and then threatening to call ICE on them. And there is actually a history of that happening, and worse, actually. I wrote a story a couple of years ago when I was with the Free Thought Project about these like farms and egg farms in like Illinois or something like that. I'll pull up the article later where they had like children slaves working there for years. And then also at the end, I'm gonna try to do some research on this like multi-billion-dollar city that Peter Thiel and his friends are trying to build in Greenland, which would kind of line up with why Trump has been talking the way he has about Greenland. So, yeah, welcome. Good to see you again. But yeah, I'm gonna try to sift through some of the stuff that's been online about this gunfire that's breaking out. Let's see if any of y'all have heard anything or know if there has been confirmation either way about the possibility that it was the guards shooting at their own drones. But let's see. I'll play this. Hopefully, I can play the videos a little bit better today. I decided I'll test it today, and if it doesn't work that well, then I will download them instead. See. Yeah, that definitely sounds pretty crazy. And I'm pretty sure most of these were confirmed. Oh wait, what? This is not good. Explosions. There's also a lot of people who are really playing it up for the clicks. Like there was one post that said like chaos breaking out, and it didn't seem like it was conclusive yet. I saw on another stream that those people in the streets were apparently yelling something about stay inside. I'm not I'm not 100% sure on that though. Let's see what's on this one. That does look like a mist of some sort. I don't know if it's taken from right now. Let's see. Yeah, because there is a possibility that this could be an attempted coup. Because of course the central government is weak right now with what just happened. So there is, of course, a power vacuum that people are going to try to rush into. Let's see what else we can find here. That was another thing. The anti-aircraft was going off, but I'm not sure if this is you're shooting on your own drones because you're nervous. Yeah, that's definitely anti-aircraft. And it sounds like there's also gunfire at the street level too. I mean, it makes sense why people are saying that. See what else they got. Where's this other
No me
video?
jodas, no me jodas. Acuérdate que son balas, Santiago. Acuérdate que son balas.
That's from a different angle, I guess.
¿Qué es eso? ¿Y se quiso ir la luz?
Yeah, and the other thing is like the whole "we shot on our own drones" thing could be misinformation because they're trying to make it look like everything's okay. And it could also be they shot on their own drones because they're scared. According to testimony from local residents, the gunfire and assemblage of military forces in Flores, Venezuela, were the result of a misunderstanding caused by a civilian drone. Oh, okay. That makes more sense than shooting on their own drones. They said it earlier, it was at the presidential palace, apparently, though. So somebody was flying a drone around the presidential palace, and now they're saying it's just a civilian drone. Could be. But there also are definitely a lot of forces. Look at it. This was the report breaking. Reports indicated heavy gunfire. Like I said, a lot of these people play the shit up. Somebody is running from the capital of Venezuela. A plane just taken off for yeah, that's kind of weird. Who knows though? This is another this says armed men are on the streets.
Al suelo. Mandando a tirar al suelo a este carajo y este carajo ni.
I see him right there. Yep.
Si escucha lo que le dice y que para dónde vas tú, yo vivo aquí, le dice este carajo. Mierda, qué
That guy's
susto,
just
chavo.
chilling.
Al suelo.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because in these times there's so much propaganda everywhere, especially now with the internet. Video footage earlier shows some kind of gunfire being directed upwards to the sky, supporting claims that the military and security forces were attempting to down some kind of drone near the presidential palace. So I don't think they could determine whether it's a civilian drone that quickly or not, honestly. Unless they found the person that was there and it was just some, dumbass. Or it was, an opposition protester or something, perhaps. Yeah, I think we saw these. So it looks like the cops hit the streets immediately because of that. See, and even as soon as an hour ago, people saying coup. I mean, that is one of the top risks right now. Because you never know who's going to get into power in that situation. We've seen how ugly that can be in many places. The celebration has paused. These people. See what Dropsite has posted recently, if they have any recent updates on that. Nah, it doesn't appear like it. So I'll move on to the other story I saw. Let's see what else we got in the chat. What else are they doing to the children? Oh, yeah, exactly. I'll bring up that article in a minute. Let's see. And then I kind of started down this rabbit because I like I said, I wrote about this a couple of years ago, but I started down this rabbit hole again because last night King K in the chat was talking about this story. Let's see here. There was a video about this. Tiny Pacific nation of Palau to take migrants from U.S. in return for aid. I watched the video about it. I don't want to take the guy's content, but I can definitely sum up the situation as basically like um, this small island nation, which I actually know a little bit about for a very odd reason, and I'll explain in a minute. But they have agreed to take in all of these immigrants from the U.S. that have not been accused of any crime or anything like that. They were just here illegally. But let's see. I think they were paying in this regards. The United States granted 70. Yeah, so I think they're being paid by the U.S. to take these immigrants as well. So the weird thing about the nation of Palau is it's like an island nation. Like I don't think that's it. Is it that small? I think that just is a part of it, I'm sure. But yeah, so anybody can become a citizen of this place. Like you can apply for citizenship there and you can get an ID for Palau and be a Palau citizen. And actually you can kind of get around certain um like US geo blocks that way and stuff like that. Like if you have to sign up for an account of something that is geo blocked in the US, you can get a Palau ID. And um that is just a weird ass thing. And yeah, so let's see. Let's go through this story a little bit though. Palau will take up to 75 immigrants from the U.S. in return for additional aid after the tiny Pacific Island nation signed a memorandum of understanding with Washington on transfer of third country nationals. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau spoke to Palau President Suranjil Whips. It's tripping me up. In a call on Tuesday about transferring third world nationals to Palau. They're calling them third country nationals. Third was so weird. I guess this is UK terminology that I'm not familiar with. The two sides said in separate statements after Palau's lawmakers rejected a previous request from Washington earlier on the matter. President Donald Trump's immigration policies, included in his has been broadly condemned by human rights advocates. Let's see what the thing is here, though. They're talking about a need to put these people to work in here. Palau, with a population of 17,000, has a compact and free association with the U.S., which provides economic assistance in return for allowing American military access to its territory. Palau is not a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention. So it's got this. So yeah, the basic thing is like these people are being shipped to an island very far away to work and they have no choice in the matter. Yeah, that is definitely very sketchy. And who knows what the hell is going on over there. Yeah, they're supposed to pay them. That is crazy. So there's that, and then like there is actually some stuff in this country that's going on where people are being taken advantage of because their legal status by their employers. I'm not sure if this video is real or staged. Just I definitely saw it. I looked around. I didn't see it debunked anywhere, but I also didn't see it confirmed anywhere either. But regardless, this is happening all over the place and it's documented, and that's what I'm going to show after I show this video.
Nos están forzando, nos están obligando a trabajar. Estamos aquí en Charlotte, Norte Carolina. Estamos trabajando a cambio de comida. Wow. El gabacho, el dueño de la propiedad, nos tiene amenazados de echarnos inmigración y estamos trabajando gratis. Nos tienen secuestrados adentro de una bodega. Queremos que toda la gente se dé cuenta de lo que está pasando aquí con nosotros. Nos tienen secuestrados adentro de una bodega. Nos están obligando a trabajar gratis. Sí. Necesitamos que alguien nos ayude. Estamos aquí obligados a trabajar gratis a cambio de comida por miedo a la inmigración. Por favor, alguien nos ayude. Que alguien haga una denuncia. Por favor, necesitamos ayuda. Mi gente.
Yeah, so he didn't give any like real information in there to figure out what's going on aside from that it's in Charlotte. And there were some people who pointed out, like, isn't he afraid of retribution, putting his face on there? Um, I see that point, but at the same time, like he could just be fed up. Like I said, I wasn't sure of the authenticity of that specific video, but because I've done some stuff on this in the past, I'm definitely familiar that this is a big part of why the immigration system exists in the way that it does. They want people to come here and be of an illegal status so they can have people who they don't have to apply certain rights to and that they can take advantage of in the workplace by not just paying them less, but forcing them into inhumane situations and just generally not treating them to the standards that workers should be treated by law here in this country anyway, which is lower than many countries actually. So let's see. This was a couple years ago. Yeah, this was 2018. So this is like 7 years ago. But I wrote this for the Free Thought Project. That's why I'm bringing it up. And a lot of the stories that I've been able to find are kind of from this time period. Um, I'm sure that a lot more will be coming out with uh, how things have intensified, and it's a much more uh, you could see it being more of a threatening tool that employers could use these days. So I definitely foresee a lot of these stories coming out in the future. I'm sure a lot of people are afraid to come out and say anything now. But this is the one that I remember that kind of put me down this line of research because I really didn't know that this kind of stuff was going on until I hit this story that day. So it says another suspect pleaded guilty to his role in a trafficking ring that took place of immigrant children and forced them into slave labor. 50-year Pablo Duran Ramirez is the fourth person to plead guilty in the case, which involved a number of children being forced to work on an egg farm. According to court records, a labor company named Haba Corporate Services, owned by Ramirez, arranged for trafficked immigrants to work at Trillium Farms, where they were physically threatened and forced to live in horrible conditions. Trillium reportedly paid Haba $6 million for the immigrant workers who were promised that they would be provided with jobs and education when they got to the States. Some of the workers were as young as 14 years old. And this is like very similar to the stuff that you hear like happening in the UAE where people go and they have their passports taken and stuff like that. This has happened in many circumstances. Yeah, so some of the workers at that farm were among the 1,500 immigrant children that were lost by border officials after they were kidnapped by them in that time period. And I was looking through for some other stories, and I found this one, which was from a similar time period, and it had a lot of different incidences and documentation of this happening. And it also talks about North Carolina in here too, which is that video that guy was talking about. And they are running very, very heavy in North Carolina ICEs right now. So I looked through this a little bit earlier. But there were a couple cases here down at the bottom. And when I was searching around for this, I saw that there were a lot of lawyers' offices. Like, has your employer threatened to call ICE on you? Is your employer like, withholding payment? Yeah, so slavery in the H-2A program is far too common, and few cases garner the same level of attention and headlines as Georgia's shocking Operation Bloomin' Onion. According to federal indictment, migrants from Mexico and Central America were forced to dig for onions with their bare hands under the threat of gun violence, earning just 20 cents for each bucket harvested. This was in Georgia. At least 2 people died from heat exposure on the job, and one woman, was reportedly assaulted. One of the victims' labor camps was surrounded by electric fencing, and they were otherwise held in cramped and unsanitary mobile homes with raw sewage leaks and no access to food or safe drinking water. Yeah, I mean, this stuff is um, a very big problem at a lot of these places. Um, so it's no secret that the program has long been a vehicle for human trafficking and slavery. Last year, it was barely a blip on the news radar when Florida labor contractors Vladimir Moreno was sentenced to 10 years in prison for using the program to track Mexican workers into the U.S. to perform forced labor. And they prefer to have immigrants of that status. That is why they won't allow people to just get citizenship here, which it should be the case. They want yeah, yeah, exactly. They deported them for working illegally, kidnapped them, lost their kids, and then made them work illegally. Yeah, exactly. It's really insane, and they made money every step of the way too. I believe these men are working to get their children's debt paid off and get them back. My 2 cents. HHH is responsible. Yeah, I could see that definitely for sure. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of cases like this, and I'm sure it's happening to a massive extent right now. Um, but yeah, that I definitely wanted to jump to that, and I there was some other new let's see. There was some other new Venezuela stuff as well. But if you have anything else, let me know in the chat if you see anything that I'm missing for sure. Oh yeah, this was a wild situation. So this might be like it sounds crazy, but I can see us being in a kind of reality right now where this would actually be a thing and it would actually work. So let's see. The senior editor for Lawfare, I'm gonna have to look and see what they are. Never heard of them. Says hours before Maduro's first court appearance on federal criminal charges, a senior Justice Department official amplified a post speculating. Wow, a senior Justice Department official amplified a post speculating that the Venezuela dictator would plead to lesser charges by proffering evidence that the 2020 US election was stolen. That's his only gambit. Like that's the only thing that's probably going to work is trying to pull something like that. So, Sean Davis, I guess that is who that person is, huh? Let's see. Okay, so he is the CEO and founder of the Federalist. Yeah, and he's sharing a bunch of libs of TikTok stuff. So yeah, he probably is like a senior Justice Department official. That's insane. And yeah, so that would be interesting because if the whole like Justice Department is run by Trump people and that's one of their issues that they're, m- brain broken about, I guess is the best way to say it. Um that might be a strategy that could work for him. And it would be absolutely insane and wild, but I could see something like that happening. What else did I see? Yeah, there is this whole thing with the cartel of the Suns, which the Justice Department now admits doesn't exist. That's another weird thing about this is they're just dropping all pretenses of any kind of excuses that people would usually have to invade a country, which are always bullshit anyway. But it does reveal a kind of the scary thing about it is because it reveals that they think that they can do what they want and that they're gonna take whatever they want. Um, when d when politicians lie, it makes you feel like at least they have some level of fear of the people, or getting voted out, or even getting run out of office by an angry mob. But it it seems like he is drunk with power and far past the point of that. But this said, Maduro's indictment alleges he's been trafficking in drugs since 1999, which is weird because in 1990, the CIA brought 3,000 pounds of coke into Caracas, Venezuela. The Venezuela CIA collaborators have been called the Cartel of the Suns for years. The gang Trump says Maduro leads. That's quite interesting. And now they're saying it doesn't exist after they said that that was the reason they're going in there. And it's connected to a CIA thing. So this is a news article from 1993. Looks like the New York Times or Washington Post with the type. CIA anti-drug program in Venezuela shipped a ton of nearly pure cocaine to the United States in 1990. Government officials said today. Anti-drug program. It's always so funny how they're the anti-drug programs that are shipping the drugs in. No criminal charges have been brought in the matter, which the official said appeared to have a serious accident rather than an intentional conspiracy. It's always an accident. Oh, but officials say the cocaine wound up being sold on the streets of the United States. That happens a lot. And especially around this time, or, well, not probably a little bit earlier than 1993, but the news articles about it would have been coming out at this point. The agency, made aware of a 60 Minutes investigation on the matter, scheduled broadcast on Sunday, issued a statement calling the affair a most regrettable incident involving instances of poor judgment and management on the part of several CIA officers. Yeah, I mean that's pretty wild, but that is talking about shipping it out of Venezuela, not into Venezuela, which is what this was that this one? No, that's the indictment. And yeah, that's the other thing is the CIA has been involved in so much drug running. Everywhere that we have had a war, a ton of drugs have come out of. And this was even in the Vietnam, it goes back to the Vietnam War, probably much earlier than that, but I know the kind of story that traces back to there. And that's why you had a bunch of soldiers coming back heroin addicts and stuff like that. Um, a- and there was also a large, just a large outflow coming from the army and people in the army. And then later in Afghanistan, it was while the fighting was happening initially, um, it, it was kind of more independent. But then it became like state sponsored once they got the Karzai brothers in there. And it was like their puppet dictatorship in Afghanistan. It was like a narco state. So they are constantly using drugs for their own benefit. Um, yeah. So let's. Oh, this crazy guy, man. This is like totally Nazi shit. Like, there's no other way to put it with this guy. I hope it'll play. Let's see if it will.
This whole period that happened after World War II, where the West began apologizing.
Ooh, let's see. I thought it would, if I dropped it to 720, it would work better. Might have to download him in the future.
And groveling and begging.
I don't even know,
these
honestly, what you're talking about right now.
What I'm talking about, Jake, is the idea. And by the way, you do. I know you love doing that smarmy thing, Jake. And I was hoping to be better than that this time.
I asked you about if there should be an election.
Exactly.
I asked you if there would be an election in Venezuela. That's what I asked. I said, why was the president so quick to dismiss Machado? You answered that question. And then I said,
the objective, Jake, is security and stability for the people of Venezuela. With our help and leadership, that country will become more prosperous than it has ever been in its whole history. Venezuelans,
but the woman running Venezuela right now is part of the Maduro regime.
There will be conversations, Jake, about all of these guideposts along the way. The reason why I was giving you that speech, which
But yeah, he's going on and on about how this is our hemisphere and we have every right to control it. and we're a superpower and we're going to start acting like one, and we shouldn't have given our colonies back after World War II and all this crazy shit. Um, you know, I don't know how anybody can look at that and be like, yeah, that's perfectly normal. This is how things should be going. Like, there's nothing wrong with this at all. And the Greenland thing is quite interesting because I started looking into that and I saw a couple things about it um, in passing, but I didn't really start to look into it. And then as soon as I did, I found Peter Thiel again. And I will go through this, but when I when I said Peter Thiel, I was reminded that I read the comments too much, and I read a comment that said that Peter Thiel is an anagram for reptile, and I believed it for a second, and then I was like, oh no, there's another e. There's too many e's in that. They got me. They almost got me. But yeah, I'm catching up on the comments real quick. Cool. Yeah, I Stephen Miller is like the most insane person. But yeah, I don't know why I always end up finding Peter Thiel in all these like crazy plots. Um, but this whole thing kind of makes sense because for a very long time, Peter Thiel has been trying to figure out how to have his own jurisdiction. I don't know exactly why. Um, he was very into seasteading, which is like you create your water world like place, your water world structure out there in the water, and you have your own laws out there. Now, you know, I remember seeing that before weed was legalized and stuff, and I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good idea, um, but I don't think that's why he wants to use it. I don't think he wants to have big parties out there and have a good time. It is kind of very strange. Does he want a tax haven? Perhaps that seems probably like the most logical explanation. But there are people that say that like he wants to do crazy experiments. And with his whole blood boy thing and his obsession with like longevity research, you never know. But let's look at this whole Greenland plot for a minute. So for the TLDR, they gave people Silicon Valley investors propose Greenland as a libertarian freedom city. Trump's expansionist policy includes potential military acquisition of Greenland. Greenland's strategic importance due to U.S. military base and mineral deposits. Yeah, so if there's already a US military base there, they have no military reason to try to take it over. So it has to be an economic thing. They're talking about, strategic positioning and all this, but if they already have a base, it doesn't matter. As the Trump administration intensifies efforts to acquire Greenland from Denmark or take it by force, some Silicon Valley tech investors are promoting the frozen island as a site for the so called Freedom City, a libertarian utopia with minimal corporate regulations. 3 people familiar with the matter told Reuters. The discussions are in early stages, but the idea has been taken seriously by Trump's pick for Denmark ambassador, Ken Howery. It's wild that he picks these people for these positions. It's like, all right, you hate this thing the most. I'm going to put you in charge of this. Who is expected to be confirmed by Congress in the coming months and lead Greenland acquisition negotiations, the people said. Howery, whose involvement with the idea hasn't been previously reported, once co-founded a venture capital firm with tech billionaire Peter Thiel, a leading advocate for such low regulation cities. Howery is also a longtime friend of Elon Musk, a pro-Trump advisor. Let's see. I'm really having a problem with this guy's name. Howery declined to comment. The White House did not respond to requests for comment. Sources who spoke to Reuters requested anonymity to discuss private conversations. The vision for Greenland, one of the people said, could include a hub for artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, space launches, micronuclear reactors, and high-speed rail. Okay, I could see some of those things being a desire for them to be like, I want to go and tinker on artificial intelligence and stuff like that without getting, regulated. But micronuclear reactors sounds a little bit sketch. And, you know, I got to think they're doing some twisted experiments if they got their own jurisdiction. The discussions reflect a long-standing Silicon Valley movement to establish low-regulation cities globally, including the United States, which Trump himself promised in a 2023 campaign video. See, there were some more details down here. Let's see. Vance toured Greenland with his wife Usha. Yeah, that's where we got the meme from. Speaking to troops on the military base, Vance accused Denmark of failing to protect Greenland from very aggressive incursions from Russia and from China and from other nations without detailing the alleged aggression. The government of Denmark declined to comment on the idea of U.S. tech investors founding the city there. New Manifest Destiny. Said tech investor Shervin Pishivar. I am not familiar with them. Freedom City Movement, expanding Greenland. This person wants to expand to Greenland. I gotta check out who they are. There were some other, I had another article too, and there were some other investors that I never heard of that I was kind of curious to see what they were all about. Who's this Shervin Pishivar? Iranian-American entrepreneur and former executive chairman of Hyperloop One. So he's like a, he's probably just a guy that works in all these PayPal mafia companies. Yeah, that is true. He definitely does want out of NATO. That is a complicated one. Cuz he's gonna that could be a play, because they said that would be that NATO would pull out, or that all the countries would kick the US out of NATO or something like that. And if they went for Greenland, they're talking about how it would be the Trump administration is saying that it wouldn't be a conflict, it would be a negotiation. So they're trying to say that they're basically going to strong arm Denmark out of it. But that's like an ally that you're turning into an enemy. Actually, many allies that you're turning into an enemy, which is not great. Let's see. On January 27, 2011, following the Egyptian government's shutdown of the internet, Pishivar initiated the Open Mesh project when he called for help to create software that could turn laptops. That's pretty cool. I remember the mesh network thing from back in the day. Those protests ended up kind of creating a worse situation than even they had in the beginning, though, unfortunately. I remember being really excited about it, thinking it was going to happen all over the world and stuff. And then it was like they got a military dictatorship 2 years later. Oh, and of course, look, by 5 years later, he's proposing a mobile app that could share information between police officers and citizens during traffic stops before officers approached a car in order to reduce the number of police shootings and reduce the necessary. All right, I have mixed feelings on that. Because you're connecting my phone directly to the police, regardless of whether you're telling me that it's going to reduce my possibility of face-to-face contact with them. I mean, it's probably not going to reduce my possibility of face-to-face contact with them. It'll probably reduce, some old person that ain't doing no trouble, older than me, who knows? That's interesting. So he's done political fundraising. He's got allegations. Wow, that's a hardcore one. Assaulted a woman in London. He was cleared and de-arrested following the incident. A forged police report was circulated. He was being targeted by a smear campaign. I mean, that's what you would say. I mean, multiple women. Okay, yep. There you go. Yeah, I don't know why I like to look up everybody in these stories, you know what I mean? Just so I know, like, who I'm dealing with, and I like to look up the, sources and the people who are putting out the stories as well. Oh, that's the wrong one. There's this TechCrunch article. This TechCrunch article had more, I think, on it. And I kind of want to just dig into this topic in general because this is kind of wild. Like when they were doing the seasteading, when they were doing the seasteading thing a few years back, it was like it wasn't like they had to invade anywhere. They were just building some structure out in the ocean, so it wasn't really affecting anybody. But if they're using their influence to get Trump to invade a country or to strong arm control of a country away from a longstanding ally, that's pretty insane. So apparently, the guy that I think they introduced in the last article, this Praxis. Yeah, I don't know if it mentioned Praxis in the last article. Maybe it did. But that is what they want to call this city, is Praxis, which is really, really ironic. Yeah. Last summer, plane, they try to make this all like story like. So I went to Greenland to try to buy it, Praxis founder Dryden Brown wrote in a viral tweet later. Over the phone with TechCrunch last week, he filled down his edgelord bluster. Obviously, they have a sort of sense of pride that makes the idea of being bought, it's almost like condescending, but they would actually like to be independent. Yeah, of course they would like to be independent, not bought by some billionaires. So rather than buying Greenland, he wondered whether he could work with the government to create a new city, perhaps built on uninhabitable land. What if we can sort of build a prototype of Terminus, he said, referencing Elon Musk's name for a city on Mars. A member of the Danish parliament was not amused. Greenlandic independence requires approval from the Danish parliament and a change of our constitution. I can guarantee you that there is no way that would prove independence so you can buy Greenland. That's insane when you're trying to like go and buy countries. We've definitely hit a place where we shouldn't be in the world, where people are just like, I'm just going to buy a country. There's like a sickness in the collective imagination of whatever we've created here. But if building a new city in Greenland were just a question of financials, Brown has the resources to do it, kind of. For the last 5 years, Brown, along with co-founder Charlie Callahan, I'm going to look up both of these guys, has been at the helm of Praxis, a network state startup with the explicit goal of creating a city. He emphasized Praxis as an internet-first ideology, one that has courted controversy. Like when a Praxis member guide reportedly said that traditional Eastern-Western beauty standards on which the civilized world at its best points has always found success. What kind of weird shit is that? Despite the controversy, the Peter Thiel-backed project has recently raised $525 million. That's over $500 million. The startup has the ability to draw down the money as it hits specific milestones in its city building project. I mean, this sounds a lot like the Akon city that was supposed to happen in Senegal or something like that. And he got billions of dollars from all these investors, and it like that, there's no city. Nothing's happened. They've been talking about it for years. And then I think he ended up getting kind of caught up in some other stuff too, if I'm not mistaken. So for now, Praxis is an internet ideology in search of a physical home. The group has hosted 250 Praxis supporters in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, earlier this month, where attendees like Bedrock's Jeff Lewis and, yeah, former Prime Minister of Georgia were presented with different location options for praxis. So this is something like they're going to try to do this. I mean, they built a lot of seasteads, like they did. So I don't think they're in use now. Maybe they are. But they obviously didn't create the kind of like civilization that they wanted to. Let's see. See if there was anything else in here. If I was going to look through those founders and see what their deal was. I'm not sure if they're just like Teal blood boys. Let's see. You all know that story, right? That like Peter Thiel gets blood transfusions from young men to give him like youthfulness. Like that's not a conspiracy. Like that's a thing that has been publicly known for years. We have both the Singaporean and Qatar Emiri Air Forces on U.S. soil in Idaho. I question that often. Yeah, that is kind of strange. Yeah, yeah. I'll actually pull that up. Hold on. Let's see. I think yeah, it's like parabosis. It's called the paraboiosis. Let's see here. Peter Thiel is very, very interested in young people's blood. The contrarian venture capitalist believes transfusions may hold the key to his dream of living forever. This is like Inc.com. This is not like, InfoWars or something. More than anything, Peter Thiel, the billionaire technology investor and Donald Trump supporter, wants to find a way to escape death. He's channeled millions of dollars into startups working on anti-aging medicine, spends considerable time and money researching therapies for his personal use, and believes society ought to open its mind to life extension methods and that sound weird or unsavory. See, this is why I think he wants to do experiments on his personal little kingdom. Speaking of weird and unsavory, if there's one thing that really excites Teal, it's the prospect of having younger people's blood transfused into his veins. The practice is known as paraboiosis, and according to Teal, it's a potential biological fountain of youth, the closest thing science has discovered to an anti-aging panacea. Research into paraboiosis began in the 1950s with crude experiments that involved cutting rats open and stitching their circulatory system. Jesus Christ. After decades languishing on the fringes, it's recently started getting attention from the mainstream researchers, with multiple clinical trials underway in humans in the US and even more advanced studies in China and Korea. Considering the science fiction promise of paraboiosis, the studies have received notable little fanfare, but Teal has been watching closely. In Monterey, California, about 120 miles from San Francisco, a company called Ambrosia recently commented on one of the trials, titled Young Donor Plasma Transfusion and Age-Related Biomarkers. It has a simple protocol. Healthy participants aged 35 and older get a transfusion of blood plasma from donors under 25, and researchers monitor their blood over the next 2 years for the molecular indicators of health and aging. The study is patent-funded. Participants range from the late 30s through the 80s, must pay $8,000 to take part, or live in or travel to Monterey. So let's see where Peter Thiel gets involved. Ambrosia's founder, Stanford trained physician, has been studying aging for more than a decade. So yeah, like Thiel is definitely watching everything in that industry. While Ambrosia advertised the study to attract participants, it didn't seek broader coverage, so Kurzman was somewhat surprised to get a message from Jason Kam, chief medical officer at Thiel Capital, who expressed interest in what the company was doing. I'd really like to talk to you about the business, what the business model would be, they said. Yeah, helping rich people live longer and while they're draining the blood of young poor people. Although his LinkedIn profile identifies him as an angel investor, that's not Cam's primary job. An osteopath with a background in treating elite athletes. He's a personal director, health director to Peter Thiel. Let's see. So he's investing in this. I've heard that he gets these treatments too, and there was actually this joke about it on the show Silicon Valley that was around like 10 years ago. Um, the founder of like the Google like company that was like based on a combination of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, basically. He was getting blood transfusions from these young blood boys. So he did invest in the company. I'm not sure if his use of the blood boys is an urban legend or confirmed, but I mean, you got to think if he's investing in it, he's experimenting with it. It's the same with the people who are like investing in mushrooms and stuff like that and like psychedelic assisted therapy. They're usually not people who have never done it before. Every now and then you do find some people. I mean, it is not exactly the same, but I mean, it's comparable. Let me catch up on the chat. Maybe that's why Little Hands-On is the way they are now. They have the treatment. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, when you have everything, that's what you want to do. When you have everything that money can buy, I guess the next thing is trying to live forever. It is crazy. I mean, although I'm scared as hell of dying, so I understand. But I don't understand the being so rich that's all you can hope for thing. Let's see. I think I'm not convinced. Let's see. See if we can find some more about his no, just that he's investing in this company and very interested where you could get young people's blood. Um, but you never know. You never know. Um, he's heavily involved in the startup that is harvesting the blood of the young. Um, but yeah, let's look into these founders of this company here. Dryden Brown and what's the other guy's name? Co-founder. Let's see. Co-founder Charlie Callanan. Oh my God, that that headline. So it doesn't even. He doesn't even have. This is the. Oh my God. Oh my God, I can't handle this. This is another little dweeb, man. Let's see. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia, and he's trying to create the Praxis proposed city. Let's check out the Wikipedia for this. Praxis is a company founded by two guys that don't have Wikipedia pages with Howard Hughes Corporation, founder David Weinreb as vice chairman. Praxis, yeah, we know about that. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, Ayn Rand City. New York Times writes that Praxis founder isn't a charismatic speaker or an accomplished businessman, and that he is big on promises and light on specifics. Yeah, I mean, usually people who are trying to create a kingdom would. Let's see. Oh my God. Brown told a speechwriter that his inspiration for Praxis came when he saw people looting stores in Soho during the George Floyd protests. That's what he got out of that. Okay. Following the protest, he rented a cabin in Alaska. What a little bitch. Brown has lamented the organization of modern cities and their perceived lack of shared values. Wow. Oh my God. So look, a former Praxis employee said Brown's ideal government is authoritarian fascism without religion and instead the state partly holding up everything together. So that is in the Mother Jones article. Let's see if they got a paywall. See if we can find more from this friend, this former. Let's see. Free market, Mediterranean city-state, the company hopes. Former employee said is interested in fascist authors and occultism and has touted a book that argues that Black people are intellectually and geez, man. I assumed I might be turned away. So yeah, there's like people trying to make this city are straight up fascist. It's founded as Blue Book cities. So yeah, I mean, I think it's highly likely that this is what they're trying to do in Greenland. Let's see what else. Fascism, and instead the state is partly holding everything together. Think of this as a hybrid to resolve the tensions. Here's more of this quote. There are cruel people around the world who associate with Dryden Brown, which I'll never understand. I think it's because they just don't spend a lot of time with him, so that's not super relevant. Sometimes they like only show you a part of the quote, so I like to go to the original and see if I could see the whole thing or any more context. But yeah, so it sounds like this thing is very sketch, right up Trump's alley, right up the administration's alley, and this I think I'm convinced, like after looking through some of this. Evoke the salon culture of the Parisian Enlightenment. His parties. That's what he wanted to do with his parties. Very weird. 6 members of the staff were living in the Praxis loft. This sounds like FTX all over again. See if they have any other locations in mind. 20 as recently as a couple months ago, Vanity Fair reported that Brown had stated that he had selected a location in California to build Praxis as a new city named Atlas, about an hour north of Santa Barbara. Let's see. Near a Space Force base. Didn't even realize they had them already. Yeah, so it looks like he's looking at a couple of locations. I think for them, they see Greenland as uninhabited. They're pulling the classic colonizer trope and just being like, "There's no people here." Openly, yep. Employees at Praxis received a welcome packet containing recommendations for books that openly promote racism and fascism. An internal Praxis slideshow highlighted traditional writer Julius Evola's thinking on the 4 functional classes or castes, suggested the categories should guide the company's recruitment of new members and prospective residents. Wow. And see, look, see also Acon City. That's like, I don't think it's related, but I think it's just like these kind of fascist dystopian utopian things. Yeah. So that's pretty crazy. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's definitely giving Jim Jones vibes. And that's the thing is Peter Thiel comes from a extremely racist town in South Africa where they like Zig Heiled to each other every morning at the Nazi flag and stuff. I'm not even exaggerating. That is the thing. I did a video about it a couple days ago. It so that's where he came from. And that that's where his ideology was molded. So the fact that he wants to create another little fiefdom like that and that he is putting all of his money into an administration that is trying to bring back colonialism. Not just colonialism has always been it's always continued, but at the same time uh you know it's the openness of it is an alarming uh alarming development, because that means that they're trying to accelerate it and be more brutal and more open with the colonization, because at least under the terms that we currently are arming other countries under with sanctions and the IMF and the World Bank and stuff like that, uh you know it's a little bit more of a like as they say, a velvet glove over the iron fist, which it's still an iron fist, but at the same time, you're not getting your country bombed and your leader kidnapped in the middle of the night for whatever chaos to break out after that. Um, so yeah, it is pretty wild. Um, I also while I'm on, there was some other stuff that I saw that I bookmarked that I should just go through. I think that might be because I'm pretty convinced on this Praxis thing. Let's see if we could find anything else on it. If not, I'll go to my bookmarks and see what else I saw today. Let's see. Praxis. Um let's see. Praxis Greenland. So I'm just gonna try to see if I can find anything recent because likely most of these articles are gonna say the same thing. You know how it is. It's like one place writes something and then unless another place interviews somebody, that's why I had two, you usually find the same thing in every. So this is the other bro. We saw the one bro, but I guess this shows you the other bro. These are the guys that didn't have much bios other than the fact that they want to create a fascist kingdom for Peter Thiel and they probably are blood boys. And like that was the joke I was making when Elon Musk had all of his little Doge boys and I was like they are definitely blood boys. The network state yeah, so that's the network state is a big part of this too, and that's that guy Balaji's concept, and it's like, you know, parts of it are actually somewhat plausible and I would agree with, like the fact that you can build communities with people you meet online and have them be you know as important as a government is without having a geographical proximity to those people um but I feel like Balaji and his friends take it in a very, very dangerous place a lot of times, and they're just like basically these super rich tech guys that are all around the PayPal mafia. Let's check out my, and of course, the New York Post has the only positive story on those two guys. Saw this one. There was some wild Epstein stuff that came out today. So Michael Wolff is popping off again. I'm pretty sure I've heard this claim before. I've also heard the claim that they met on Epstein's plane. And I saw another wild post today. I'm pretty sure I saw it on Blue Sky, but I'm not sure if I can show it on stream. But there's like this famous image of Melania Trump where she is like wearing almost nothing and she's on a private plane with this briefcase and there's like stuff in the briefcase and she's wearing sunglasses. You know, it is a you know, a good photograph if you were to like you know, if you were a photographer, it would be a good photograph. It would be like an iconic photograph, I guess you could say, if you weren't a terrible person. But that it was apparently on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. And now Michael Wolff is saying that that Epstein hooked up with Melania before Trump did. Let's see what he has to say of this. Of course, I don't think any of us like him here, but he did you know sit with Jeffrey Epstein for years listening to him. So I would even listen to what Steve Bannon has to say on Epstein if he was willing to talk about it, even though I don't like him either. So let's see what he has to say about this.
A new book was published yesterday in the US and UK entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. It's by a British journalist by the name of Andrew Loney. And it's about the pathetic life of Prince Andrew, but it is also about his connection to Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and Melania Trump. And in fact, it contains a passage in which Epstein is quoted, and this is from an interview apparently in 2007, where he says that he had sex with Melania a full year before Donald Trump commenced his relationship with Melania. Now,
so he basically said there that there is a new book out, and probably published from a British author, released both in the UK and the US, specifically about Prince Andrew. But you know, Trump and Melania are catching strays, because it's also mentioned that Epstein apparently has claimed to have hooked up with Melania before Trump. Or when I say hooked up, I mean in that kind of environment. Who knows? Like, it, you know, and that with Melania, it's a very weird thing. Like, the line between somebody who is it probably was a victim at one point, and then they become a part of the predatory system. And it's like, where is that line, and when does that happen, and when does that start? And it, you know, like when you look at the Nadia Marcinkova and some of them, and it's like, it's just a, you know.
The book was, the hardcover copy of the book was widely available yesterday, and it contains that passage. But the ebook and the audio book, which were also released yesterday, do not contain that passage. So what happened here is that between the printing and the distribution of the book and its release, is that Melania Trump started to send threatening legal letters to anyone who might connect her directly to Jeffrey Epstein.
This has happened multiple times now with multiple different books where Melania has been mentioned in regards to Jeffrey Epstein, and it came out in like the print version, but not the audio version. And then, of course, in the second edition of the print version, it won't be in there. It was only in there because those books were shipped. So I'm pretty sure this is the second time that things have been scrubbed from books because of Melania's lawsuits relating to Epstein information.
So the publishers, I mean, and this is hard to figure out exactly what they believe they have accomplished here, but clearly they published the book and clearly had it vetted by lawyers and decided it was legally sound. But then, in the face of Melania Trump's threats, they ran and hide. I mean, it's kind of ostrich-like to think that they could put the book out, and that the book can, the printed book can contain one thing and the other versions another. But that's not the point. The point is just panic. So we're at this moment in time when this information about Epstein and Trump and the Trumps is coming out, and yet at the same time, the White House is doing everything to stop it from coming out. And
that's the other thing I was thinking, is that with all this stuff with the war, I can imagine Trump, that they haven't turned in any of the information that they're supposed to release to the public in regards to the Epstein files. And they're now way past due. And I'm thinking that if it starts to get pressed, at least when it comes to the media, they probably can't fight it this way in court. But when it comes to the media, they're going to say, why are you even asking me about Epstein? We're in the middle of a war now, and we have more important things to talk about. They may try to play that in court, though, because they are trying wild things in court. Yeah. I mean, I think it's rough watching Wolf because yeah, he is slimy, and but who else is going to hang around with Epstein other than slimy ass people? That's why we got to either sift through the emails or we got to rely on what Steve Bannon and Michael Wolff heard from him in his dying days. And then there's this whole thing with Ron Eppinger. I saved this. I don't know. I could probably look for some paths that we can go down with that. I could look for him in the files and stuff. But I did read a lot about him in Virginia's book, and he was the first person that trafficked her before Epstein. And she was getting her life back together when she met Ghislaine Maxwell. And there was definitely very, very weird stuff going on with him. He literally picked her up on the side of the street as she was crying and, obviously wounded after she had just escaped an assault from a guy who, nearly killed her after she had escaped from a teen home where she was being abused because she was sent there by her family because she was acting out after her father abused her. But anyway, after that situation happened, she ran away from the guy that tried to kill her. She was crying on the side of the road, and a limousine pulls up. And this dude is in the limousine with another woman, a young Ukrainian girl, probably, and said that he ran a modeling agency and that he could help her and that, oh, I'm sorry, look, you look so hurt. And then, within hours of getting into that guy's car, she realized oh shit, this is what happened. And then she eventually got away from him somehow. I forget. I think he got busted, actually. Yeah, he got busted, and she was found very young and on drugs because he got her hooked on drugs and stuff. I think she was 14 at that point or something. And then she got her life back together, and then she got a job at Mar-a-Lago 2 years later. And I suspect this hasn't been said, there hasn't been reporting on this, but from what I read in her book and some of the things she said, even though she has never implicated Trump in anything, some of the things where I read between the lines a little bit, it very much appeared that because her father got her the job at Mar-a-Lago, and that's sketch because her father was the first person who abused her, and he allowed his friends to. And now if he works for Trump, maybe all of Trump's employees don't know about everything that he's into, but I feel like the creeps in the area probably know each other. There's probably some kind of creep club or some kind of something going on with people who are fucked up in the head. And because obviously this guy and his friends knew that they were both fucked up in the head somehow, and were trading their children. So, and this is all in Virginia's book. So then I really do feel like her father pushed her into Mar-a-Lago, knowing that it would eventually be a gateway to Jeffrey Epstein. And then she said in her book that she suspects that he was paid off by Jeffrey later. But I feel like he was involved earlier, probably. Bet Trump and Sky Roberts were talking. Yeah, that it's true that they probably are just crude and they say certain things to each other and they pick up on the dog whistles or whatever, the creep dog whistles, and end up going in that direction. But yeah, so this is a rabbit hole to go down. I'm not sure which pathway to take today because it's probably a long one and I'm coming towards the end of the stream. But that's definitely something to look into, and just another reminder to check out her book and read her book if you haven't, because it really shows the human side of the situation and just how somebody young and innocent can get caught up like that, or even if they had been through it and known better, like she said, and got caught up in it easily again. Because with with Jeffrey the second time around, it was all of these people that she trusted that were like, oh yeah, this guy's fine. He's some rich guy. You could go work with him and make your life better. And then it ended up being what it was. So let's see. This is another one I saw. Ghislaine told the DOJ that Epstein was visiting Little St. James as a guest of the owners before buying it. And in that early phase, almost every trip, if not everyone, but almost every trip contains an individual. What does that mean? Almost every trip, not everyone, but almost every trip contained redacted maybe, an individual. Originally owned by a group of shareholders, the island was later purchased by Archwalter Cummins. And only afterward did Epstein take ownership. Arch Cummings briefly owned the island between the original shareholders and Epstein, yet there is little public documentation explaining the circumstances of the transfer. So this guy transferred the island to Jeffrey, perhaps? Arch, age 80, passed away last year. Diane Cummins was also listed as a close relative. Also noticed this thread of comments from an individual claiming to have found his personal details. He is no longer active. Let's see. Oh, this is the interview with Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. It's interesting that there was actually even some kind of interesting clue in that mess. All right, let's see what that other paper said here. Yeah, who knows if this is from anybody. I never trust these like Reddit comments or 4chan posts. Like I saw one the other day saying that like I worked on the island and it was like this big ass thing. And I was like, I'm not really buying this. Let's see. Oh yeah, this was another wild one. Remember what like the thing that happened yesterday where Trump was saying that the vice president or the opposition president that they were trying to set up as the new hero that won the Nobel Peace Prize, Trump doesn't want her to be in power because she didn't turn down the Peace Prize and say that Trump should have it. And that if she did that, she would be the president of Venezuela today. And apparently that's like a direct quote. And that's why I think it could actually work if Maduro tries to pull some crazy shit, like saying that he has evidence that the 2020 election was stolen and that he's actually on Trump's side, and that they, that he would try something like that and that would work, because that seems to be the situation. Oh yeah, there was another one that was really good on the insurgencies thing, but I think yeah, this was interesting too. There is apparently a pro-Israel billionaire, Paul Singer's recent purchase of Citgo as motivation for the takeover of Venezuela oil. So yeah, I've heard a bunch of different theories about what they're trying to do here. Some of it involves the oil. Some of it involves like the wag the dog factor of Trump trying to distract people, and like the ego factor of it. And then there is this whole Monroe doctrine too, but it could be a little bit of everything. I'm seeing a lot of mixed analysis, I guess you could say, of what this oil extraction will entail, like how profitable it will be. Why don't they actually pull a lot of oil from there currently? Would it be actually a bad thing if a bunch of oil floods the market from this place, for certain economies? So it does look like, let's see. Sale of Citgo happened last year. Let's see. Let's see what they're pointing to here. Ryan Grimm usually has really good stuff. U.S. stole Citgo and is now trying to give Venezuela oil reserves to Paul Singer. You know, I wouldn't be surprised because it came down to that whole thing where they gave 20 billion or 40 billion dollars to Argentina. It was partly because he's also a fascist down there, and then it was partly because I think somebody in the Trump administration was invested in Argentinian currency and was about to go under on his deal. So, judge approves sale of Houston based energy. How neocon billionaire Paul Singer is driving the outsourcing of U.S. tech jobs to Israel. And he's trying to get Massey out of office. Yeah, there was. Oh, wow. In 2011, the First Lady of the U.S. Virgin Islands emailed Jeffrey Epstein a $25,000 college tuition bill for her child. Days later, she consulted Epstein on changes to a sex offender registry law. What? He was already wow. Let's see. This is one of the emails that came out. Did you want to act as a host but not included in the invitation? Which event would you like to donate to? He says, Host Anonymous. Thank you so much for your continued support. Let's see. On the 3 levels. This might be the talk of the changing of the law. Epstein suggested edits to the law that would let him travel without reporting, reduce public access to offender info, and protected who he stayed with. She replied, I will forward this suggestion. And that was just for $25,000. Epstein received roughly $300 million in tax breaks. Well, I bet that $25,000 was just like one thing. He probably got a lot of bills. Yeah, I mean, they're especially with Epstein, there's a lot of Israel connections for sure. I mean, he was deeply involved with them, and I think very similar to Robert Maxwell is that he worked for Robert Maxwell worked for MI6, the Mossad, and the KGB. I think that Epstein worked for Mossad, KGB, and CIA. I don't see much overlap with the UK establishment. I guess there was some, but not as deeply on the intelligence end. And it seemed like most of his UK connections were like in the royalty, which maybe it does give you access to the intelligence. It probably would, even though they say it's separated. I would bet that the king and queen and the prince and all that have, uh, some kind of control over the intelligence industry. But yeah, I'm just like flying through some of the other stuff that I saw. It's kind of out of order because it's like kind of, stuff that didn't fit into my agenda, but I want to make sure I didn't like miss anything that was cool to cover. This is another thing with like this AI conversation that's happening, and I definitely agree with this take. Like I'm not a tech negative person. Like I generally like tech and appreciate tech. I just think that the people who own the companies are oligarchs and they shouldn't be. But with this AI thing, there needs to be some kind of radical restructuring of our economy to make up to compensate for this. And I think it has to be tied to a collective ownership of the AI, because the AI is trained on all of our data anyway. So we should own all of us should own a piece of it, and we should own a piece of what wealth it generates. I feel like that's only fair, or else you have this situation that this person describes where if AI truly does what they say it's going to do, everyone loses their job and there's 10 trillionaires that own everything. Then what happens? It would be, I mean, this is why some of them are talking about UBI, but that's still like we're on a stipend from, the lords of the fiefdom. So that it can kind of get sketch. I think we're probably a little bit of a ways out from that, but regardless, we're still in a situation now where I think we need to, like, most of the tech businesses that exist today should be co-ops anyway. It kind of, yeah, it kind of is. I mean, my politics are driven by just humanitarianism, and I don't, it's we live in this society where it's like people don't give a shit about anybody else, and it's just like fuck you, I'm going to get mine. And we've seen with this war situation, a lot of people are cheering things on because they think that it is going to make gas cheaper or something, which was the arguments that we saw around Iraq, and when we were going into the Middle East, everybody was saying the same thing. And I don't, I guess people have really short memories about that. But I think that businesses work better as co-ops and non-hierarchical. Uh, and there are arguments that like centralization, you can uh act faster, and there's like too many chefs in the kitchen in situations where you have too much ownership of things. But I don't necessarily think that's true. I've definitely worked in decentralized organizations, and sometimes things move a little bit slower, but that's not necessarily a bad thing depending on what industry you're in. That's why I don't say it as like a blanket thing, like everything should be a co-op. But I do think that most of the tech companies that exist today should, and most like utility type things should definitely be co-ops instead of like the crazy monopolies that we see with most of them now. But let's see what else we got. And yeah, if you were around last night, I screened a little bit of the documentary that I'm working on, or I guess you'd probably more accurate to call it a video essay. Let's see if I got any way through it. I could show a little bit more of it. Let's see. Hold on just a minute. Yeah, let me bring that up. I'll show a little bit more of it. I think it's in my downloads folder. So the concept with this, it lines up very well with kind of this neocolonialism situation that we're seeing now. Wow, it's already coming out and I can't pause it. Those who control the words control which questions get asked, which victims get remembered, and which crimes get prosecuted. Examples of... So yeah, it basically shows how every war that we've had, at least this century, was based on resource extraction, at least since World War II. And even a lot of what happened in World War II, not in the main theaters that we all learn about in history class, was these powers carving up different colonies. And, the thing that Stephen Miller described earlier in his rant to the CNN guy that's name's escaping me, he really described a twisted way of what happened after World War II. because he said that we gave up all of our colonies, when that's not really what happened. What happened after World War II was a different pretense for colonialization developed. And maybe he's just too dumb to understand that we've still been colonizing all of these countries for the past 100 years. And because they have this veneer of like, you know, pretending that their interventions are about humanitarianism. And last night, I still have the live stream up. I've been kind of unlisting some of them, just because I like to put edited versions out, and you know, I think that's better sometimes. But I'm going to leave that one up because it does give a preview of the video, and it talks about Guatemala, which is the original banana republic where that phrase came from. And it kind of gets into, you know, just this resource extraction and the excuses that are used to justify it. And that's kind of what happened after World War II is we carved up all of these states into vassal states. Exactly. And we would make sure that there were puppet dictators there that would do whatever our politicians wanted. And then we would extract the resources, maybe not to the same degree that we did during colonialism, but in still a colonialist fashion. And that is what has continued to happen. But now it's definitely getting more blatant for sure. Yeah, the narrative has changed so many times with this invasion. It's insane. And the funny thing is that the media, regardless of who is in power and which side it is, the media is always going to cheer on a war because the war industry pays a lot of their salaries through the Boeing commercials and all that kind of stuff, like I explained last night. But they're tripping all over themselves trying to explain these 10 different you know, excuses that are coming from the administration, and they're having a very hard time doing it, and nobody's buying it. But let's see if I showed Guatemala last night. Let's see if I have any other dictatorship that would last 21 years. Dictatorship. Let's see. I don't know if I do have Indonesia. Indonesia's a crazy one. Let's see. Let's see what we got. The U.S. was paying 80% of the cost of France's attempt. Yeah, that's Vietnam, which I talked about. All these different ones are. It was all for resources. Let's see what we got. Because it would have produced the wrong result. It delivered. I'm trying to fast forward it to the right place, and I don't have. The CIA had been trying to destabilize his government. Don't have the right timestamp. In 1958, the agency backed a regional rebellion. Yeah, here's Indonesia. Yeah, there we go. 3137. It sat on some of the world's richest. 3130. All right. This is like the end of Vietnam. I'll get it started up. Let's see. If you watched last night, then you kind of know the premise is that the Cold War was World War III, and we changed the narrative on it to avoid prosecution for war crimes and just general propaganda to downplay the significance of the, you know, Nazi bullshit that the U.S. government has done after the past 100 years. So let me open up this different tab here, and I'll be releasing this in full on the channel probably in 2 weeks. I hope to have it finished in 2 weeks. I have about 40 minutes done, and it's about an hour and a half total. Let's see here. The audio, I hope there's no issues with the audio. When I listened to the playback last night, it sounded like a little bit different, but let me know if it's an issue. This is the end of Vietnam.
It deliberately escalated even when officials knew they couldn't win.
I couldn't bring it up at exactly the right place, so I had to bring it up at the end of this one. Many people know the Vietnam story, so I wasn't going to play it from there. There are some unique things I have in there, but
Vietnam proved America would fight long, destructive wars to prevent countries from choosing economic independence. Vietnam was World War III at its most visible, fought in full view of global media, protested by millions. It showed the pattern clearly. American politicians learned a different lesson. Intervention wasn't wrong, it just needed better PR and local proxies instead of American troops. Visible wars created problems at home. Future wars would be more hidden. Indonesia should have been impossible to control. The archipelago stretched across 3 and it controlled shipping lanes between the Indian and Pacific Oceans.
the thing about Indonesia is, oh, there's no sound? Whoa, hold on. That's not great. Really? Hold on. There's no sound. Let me try to stop and then share again. Let's see. Some screens let you share. Oh, okay. Yep, you're right. Sorry about that. Thank you for good looking out there.
World.
It sat on
Some
some
of
of
the
the
world's
take it back here.
produced the wrong result.
It This is actually kind of cool because the end of this Vietnam part kind of explains a little bit of the concept of the video. And then with Indonesia, it's unique. It's kind of unique in these flow of stories because of the fact that we don't directly attack there, but our CIA trains and probably other branches of the government trained death squads there, propped up a dictator, made sure that they were in control of who was in power, and it created just as much, if not more, destruction than it would have if they just bombed them outright. So when we look at U.S. foreign policy around the world and the colonialism that happens, um, just because something isn't a declared war, and because we didn't have boots on the ground there or didn't have a direct operation there that was in the public, doesn't mean that we didn't have a very, very heavy hand in pushing them towards a dictatorship and propping up that dictatorship. It deliberately escalated even when officials knew they couldn't win. Vietnam proved America would fight long, destructive wars to prevent countries from choosing economic independence. Vietnam was World War III at its most visible, fought in full view of global media, protested by millions. It showed the pattern clearly. American politicians learned a different lesson. Intervention wasn't wrong, it just needed better PR and local proxies instead of American troops. Visible wars created problems at home. Future wars would be more hidden. Indonesia should have been impossible to control. The archipelago stretched across 3,000 miles of ocean with over 17,000 islands, where hundreds of ethnic groups spoke hundreds of languages. By 1965, about 100 million people lived there, the fourth most populous country in the world. It sat on some of the world's richest deposits of oil, natural gas, tin, copper, gold, and nickel, and it controlled vital shipping lanes between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. In 1965, Indonesia had a popular president who wanted to use those resources for Indonesians rather than foreign corporations. Sukarno, the founding father of Indonesian independence, had been moving left, nationalizing Dutch and British oil companies, implementing land reform, and withdrawing from the UN and World Bank. which he called tools of Western imperialism.
He brought the Indonesian Communist Party, the PKI, into his government. The PKI was the third largest communist party in the world, with about 3 million members and millions more in affiliated unions and organizations. From America's perspective, Indonesia was slipping away. If it went fully communist, the United States would lose access to one of the most resource-rich regions in the world. The CIA had been...
And that's one of the main points that I make in this video essay as well, is that there are the way that this is presented is that we were fighting communism, and that was not what it was about. That was the ideological battle that they kind of framed for the public, but what it was really about was extracting resources from these places. And the reason why communism was a problem wasn't because of they had an ideological opposition to communism per se. It was because of the fact that certain communist policies, like nationalizing industries, it clashed with what their corporations wanted to do in those regions. It's the same thing that what we're seeing in Venezuela. There are elements in the U.S. government and the U.S. corporate class that are extremely pissed off that Venezuela naturalized their oil many years ago. And, you know, because some country wants to either, you know, nationalization works in different ways, whether it is they are trying to keep it within Venezuelan companies, or the government is just running all of it. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked into that part of it. But regardless, that is none of any other government's business. Like, if they can't do business somewhere, then that's like their problem. That's not something that you can bomb people for. Like, if a store isn't serving you, you can't firebomb them. And trying to destabilize his government since the 1950s. In 1958, the agency backed a regional rebellion, even providing pilots who flew bombing missions. It failed. And when an American pilot was shot down and captured, CIA involvement was exposed. By the early 1960s, American policy shifted to cultivating the Indonesian military as a counterweight to Sukarno and the PKI. On the night of September 30th, 1965, junior military officers kidnapped and eliminated 6 senior generals. They claimed they were preventing a CIA-backed coup against Sukarno. General Suharto immediately declared this was a communist coup attempt, but this made no sense. Sukarno's government had already nationalized industries, implemented land reform, and brought communists into... This is super confusing because the one guy's name is Suharto and the other guy's name is Sukarno. So Suharto had Sukarno taken out, which, you know, I was trying to figure out how to phrase things so it like came across less confusing, but their names are so similar. Power. Why would communists stage a coup against their own government? Suharto crushed the movement within hours, then turned on the PKI. He blamed the entire party for the general's deaths and claimed without evidence that communists had been planning to slaughter military families. So yeah, I mean, this guy was very close to communists, and the generals of the military claimed that the communists were trying to overthrow him. And that's why it is a very, very strange justification, and it's strange that a lot of people bought it. Let's see. Military-controlled media spread fabricated stories about communist atrocities. Stories disproven by autopsies, but effective at creating the emotional climate for genocide. Starting in October 1965, the military began arresting and eliminating PKI members. Oh, thanks for letting me know about the audio. I'm not sure why it's happening like that. I noticed that on the playback last night, and I wasn't sure if it was like that live. I'm playing it through Windows Media Player instead of like YouTube or something, which seems to be fine. I'm relatively new to streaming, so I'm still figuring this out. But luckily, when I upload this video to the channel in a couple weeks, it'll be legit sound. But definitely thanks for letting me know. This clip portion that I'm playing will be over in a minute or two. First party leaders and organizers, then anyone who attended a meeting or appeared on a membership list, then anyone accused by a neighbor. The military often didn't hurt them directly. They armed civilian militias, particularly from Muslim and nationalist groups, gave them lists of names, told them communists were planning to hurt Muslims and set them loose. Neighbors attacked neighbors, settling old grudges under cover of anti-communist purges. In 5 months, between 500,000 and 1 million people were eliminated, and the United States helped. This is historical record now, confirmed by declassified documents. The CIA provided lists of thousands of names, from national leaders down to local organizers. Embassy officials met regularly with Indonesian military officers, getting updates on the situation and checking off names as people were confirmed dead. The U.S. provided weapons and communications equipment to coordinate massacres across the archipelago. Suharto formally took power in 1967 and ruled for 32 years. He called it the New Order. It meant dictatorship, corruption, and economic policies designed to benefit foreign corporations. He reversed everything Sukarno had done. Foreign oil companies came back with favorable contracts. Mining companies got access to Indonesia's minerals. The country rejoined the World Bank and IMF. Foreign investment poured in. For Indonesians, it meant poverty and repression. Hundreds of thousands who survived the massacre were imprisoned for decades without trial. The economic growth that followed benefited foreign investors and a small Indonesian elite. Profits from oil, minerals, and timber enriched foreign corporations, while most Indonesians stayed poor. This was the development model America promoted, a country open to investment, ruled by a dictator willing to use violence, where labor was cheap and regulations didn't exist. The Middle East has some of the... Yeah, so then I get into the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Israel, kind of in that whole section, and I'm in the middle of working on that now, basically, at least the video portion. I have the audio portion pretty much done. But yeah, I definitely appreciate the feedback, but it'll be solid on the actual version. I'm just kind of giving a preview now and getting feedback on it to just see how it is. So that's good. But yeah, I think that probably is it for today. I got a lot to do early tomorrow, so probably can't hang too late. Yeah, who knows what's going to come up tomorrow? I guess we'll see. But it's been great hanging with you. I appreciate coming to join me for the after hours, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Oh, and yeah, I always forget to tell people that I have multiple books. This is my newest one, Paper Squares and Purple Stars. My Life as a Rave Outlaw. It is a memoir about my time in the music industry and the rave scene many years ago, 2008 to 2011. And I wrote it when I was in the hospital with cancer around like 2017, 2018 or something like that. I have a couple of other books that I put out before that are, more activist related. So you can check them out as well. They're pretty easy to find. Yeah, I think that's it. But yeah, I always forget to promote my stuff. I just come in here and do my thing. But yeah, I appreciate all you joining me, and I will catch you tomorrow.